Psalm 121, Divine Watchman over your life. No harm will overtake you. Psalm 121 stands as one of the most reassuring and tender declarations of God's constant guardianship over his people. Written as a song of ascents, it was sung by travelers ascending toward Jerusalem, symbolizing not only a physical journey, but also the spiritual path of every believer who looks up to the hills. Seeking divine help, this psalm does not promise a life free of trials, but it guarantees something far deeper, a life guarded by the unfailing vigilance of the Almighty. Every word in these verses unfolds like a gentle whisper of heaven, assuring us that God never sleeps, never withdraws his gaze, and never leaves his children vulnerable to harm. In this psalm, the believer recognizes the frailty of human protection and turns entirely toward the eternal strength of God. It is a song of faith, a declaration of trust, and a covenant of security between the Creator and those who walk in his ways. To meditate on Psalm 121 is to be reminded that divine protection is not conditional on the absence of storms, but on the presence of God within them. When the eyes of faith lift upward, the soul finds rest, knowing that the one who made heaven and earth is also the watchman over our days and nights. The eyes that look up, the beginning of true protection. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? These opening words are both a cry and a confession. The psalmist begins with a question that echoes through every human heart. Where does my help come from? In that question lies the essence of faith. It is not the mountains themselves that offer help, but the God who stands above them. The traveler lifts his eyes to the hills, not to admire their height, but to remind himself that beyond the visible lies the invisible source of all safety. True protection begins when the heart stops searching for rescue in earthly structures. We often look to systems, wealth, relationships, or intellect to keep us safe. Yet each of these, though useful, remains fragile. The psalmist teaches that divine protection starts when our gaze shifts heavenward. The moment our dependence transfers from the world to God, the chains of fear begin to break. Faith is not denial of danger. It is the recognition that danger cannot prevail over the hand of God. The one who looks up learns to discern the difference between illusion and truth. Mountains symbolize stability and permanence, yet even they can crumble. The human soul, however, finds unshakable peace in the realization that the Maker of heaven and earth governs all creation with precision. This acknowledgement transforms anxiety into assurance. Every believer who looks up learns that divine help is not delayed. It is already moving toward those who trust. When you lift your eyes, something powerful happens within you. The posture of your soul changes. You begin to release control, to stop clinging to outcomes, and to trust in divine timing. God's help does not always manifest as the removal of obstacles. Often, it is the strength to endure them. He sends help not just to change your circumstances, but to transform your heart while you walk through them. Looking up is an act of worship. It says, I cannot do this alone. It is both humility and courage, an admission that you are small, but that you belong to a mighty God who sees you. And in that gaze upward, fear loses its grip. The believer understands that help is not an event, it is a presence. God's help is not a fleeting rescue, it is an eternal companionship. When you look to the hills, you are not just seeking aid, you are affirming that your life is anchored in something greater than what eyes can see. The journey of faith is marked by this upward vision. Every battle, every shadow, every valley demands that we lift our eyes again and again. It is the only way to stay aligned with the reality that God reigns, and that his hand never leaves those who trust him. As you walk through your own ascents and descents, remember that every time you lift your eyes, heaven responds. Angels move, doors open, strength is renewed, and the weight of fear diminishes. The power of Psalm 121 begins with this single movement, the lifting of the eyes. For when the eyes rise, the heart follows, and where the heart goes, faith blooms. If this reflection is touching your spirit, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel. Each word shared here is meant to strengthen your faith and remind you that God watches over you always. Stay connected and let His word continue to guide your steps, the maker of heaven and earth, the unshakable foundation of divine help. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. These words form the spine of the entire psalm, the very heartbeat of its faith. The psalmist does not speak of a distant deity, nor of a symbolic comfort. He declares a living reality, that the one who shaped the galaxies and breathed the wind into existence is the same one who stands guard over his life. This verse shifts the tone from question to conviction. The eyes that once looked up with longing now see clearly that help has a source, and that source is the eternal Creator. When the psalmist calls God the maker of heaven and earth, he is not merely reciting a title. He is proclaiming that the one who rules over all creation possesses both the authority and the ability to intervene in the smallest detail of human existence. Every sunrise, every wave that breaks upon the shore, every star that burns in silence, all testify to His sovereignty. If He governs the cosmos, can He not govern a single life? If He sustains the universe, will He not sustain the soul that calls upon Him? This is the faith that dismantles fear, that nothing within creation can overpower the Creator Himself. To call upon the Maker of heaven and earth is to acknowledge that divine help is not limited by circumstance, geography, or human timing. The traveler who sang this psalm did so while walking roads filled with danger, roads where robbers hid among rocks, where heat and thirst could weaken even the strongest. Yet he sang not in despair, but in confidence, because the one who made the mountains also controlled their paths. The same sun that scorched the day was set in motion by the God who could command it not to harm His servant. Divine help, therefore, is not an escape from reality, but a transformation of how reality operates under God's authority. God's creation is not a random act of power. It is an ongoing expression of order and intention. The same intelligence that aligned the stars in constellations aligns the details of your life. When Scripture calls Him the Maker, it implies that His work continues. He is not a craftsman who finishes and departs. He is a living sustainer, continuously holding all things together. This means that your life, your struggles, your journey are not outside His workshop. They are part of His ongoing creation. The Creator is still creating, and His masterpiece includes the unfolding of your story. To trust in Him is to know that the artist never abandons the canvas. When the psalmist says, "My help comes from the Lord," he speaks in the singular. It is personal. He does not say our help, though that would also be true. He says my help, declaring ownership of faith. This is the intimate confidence that transforms religion into relationship. Divine help is not a distant promise given to humanity in general. It is a personal intervention woven into the very fabric of each believer's life. To say, "My help," is to testify that you have seen the hand of God move, that you have walked through storms sustained by invisible strength, that you have witnessed doors open where there were none. It is the declaration of someone who knows not by theory, but by experience that the Lord is faithful. In every age, humanity has struggled with the illusion of self-sufficiency. We build systems, accumulate knowledge, and structure our lives to feel secure. Yet Psalm 121 confronts that illusion directly. It reminds us that true safety cannot be engineered. It can only be entrusted. When life collapses, when control slips through our fingers, the soul remembers where help truly resides. The Maker of heaven and earth does not simply offer assistance. He commands creation to respond to the cry of His children. Every element, every circumstance, every timeline bends to his word. That is why faith in God's sovereignty brings peace even when nothing outwardly changes. To understand God as creator is also to understand that nothing about your life is accidental. Every moment, every encounter, every delay carries design. The same intelligence that designed gravity designed your growth. The same hand that shaped mountains shapes character within you. This truth demolishes despair. Because if he made everything, then nothing, no pain, no betrayal, no detour can fall outside his capacity to redeem. Even when life feels chaotic, creation itself bears witness that order still reigns. The skies never forget to open at dawn, the seas never rebel against their boundaries, and the earth never stops yielding fruit in season. Likewise, your life is governed by seasons under his watchful care. Divine help is therefore not limited to crisis. It is constant. The maker of heaven and earth does not clock in and out. He does not assist occasionally. He sustains eternally. When the psalmist declares that his help comes from the Lord, he speaks of a continual flow of grace. It is not a one-time rescue, but a living stream of protection and provision. God's help is not reactive, but proactive. He guards before the attack. He strengthens before the weakness. He guides before the confusion. In the divine order, your need never surprises him. Long before you realize your vulnerability, he has already prepared the means of deliverance. This is the mystery of divine watchfulness. God is never late because he exists outside of time. The maker of heaven and earth is not subject to clocks or calendars. His timing may stretch human patience, but it never fails divine precision. Every help arrives exactly when it will produce the greatest transformation within you. Sometimes his help comes as peace rather than intervention. Other times it comes as endurance rather than escape. But it always comes. The maker of heaven and earth does not withhold what his creation requires to fulfill its purpose. Faith in this truth changes how we pray. When you realize that your helper is the Creator, prayer stops being an act of begging and becomes an act of alignment. You no longer plead for help as if convincing God to act. You open your heart to receive what he is already doing. Prayer becomes the meeting point between divine intention and human trust. The moment you align your will with his, the invisible begins to manifest. Consider the vastness of creation, the galaxies uncounted, the stars beyond number, and remember that this same Creator has counted the hairs on your head. Such knowledge collapses all doubt. It reveals that the one who governs universes also cares for the smallest detail of your existence. This is why fear has no place in the heart that truly believes in the maker of heaven and earth. When you grasp the scale of his sovereignty, anxiety dissolves. The storms that once seemed threatening become instruments of his will. The valleys that once felt like punishment become paths of purpose. The hills you climb become altars of remembrance. Every believer must learn to see creation not as scenery but as testimony. The heavens declare his glory because they mirror his consistency. The sun rises whether you rejoice or weep. The stars shine whether you see them or not. This constancy reflects the nature of the Creator, unchanging, faithful, present. When you meditate on the fact that your help comes from such a being, your spirit gains equilibrium. Fear may still whisper, but it cannot control you. Doubt may still knock, but it cannot enter. The heart anchored in the Creator becomes immovable. And yet, divine help does not mean exemption from trial. The maker of heaven and earth does not promise to shield you from every hardship, but to sustain you through them all. There is a sacred difference between being protected from harm and being preserved in the midst of it. God's watchfulness means that nothing can reach you unless it serves your ultimate good. Even the storms he allows are filtered through his love. What he permits, he redeems. The believer therefore learns not to interpret pain as abandonment, but as preparation. The same Creator who molded clay into humanity still molds souls through experience. The pressure that shapes you is part of the divine artistry that refines you for eternity. The psalmist's confidence is rooted in remembrance. He knows that the God who created the world has already demonstrated his power countless times. Creation itself is evidence of capability. Redemption is evidence of compassion. The one who made heaven and earth did not stop there. He entered creation, walking among men, healing, restoring, and raising the dead. If he was not too great to step into human frailty, then surely he is not too distant to step into your crisis. The maker of heaven and earth is also the redeemer of souls. His creative power and his redeeming love are one and the same force, both working continuously for your preservation. There is also a profound connection between creation and trust. When you acknowledge God as Creator, you declare that your life is not random. You recognize purpose woven through chaos, design behind detours, and meaning inside mystery. This awareness does not eliminate pain, but it gives it context. You begin to see how even the broken pieces of your journey form part of a larger masterpiece. Faith then becomes the lens through which you interpret life, not as a series of accidents, but as a sacred orchestration. In the stillness of the night, when fear tries to whisper that you are alone, remember the stars. The same hand that flung them across the sky is the hand that covers you. You are not forgotten. You are sustained by cosmic precision and divine care. To trust in the Maker of heaven and earth is to know that your existence is under constant supervision from the highest authority in the universe. There is no randomness where God reigns. Each believer must come to this revelation personally. It cannot be borrowed from another's testimony. You must look up and say for yourself, "My help comes from the Lord." But it is the confession that turns faith into experience. It is the moment your dependence transfers from yourself to the eternal. That shift is where miracles begin. Not always the kind that change the world around you, but always the kind that change the world within you. When your soul learns to rest in the Maker, every threat loses its permanence. Fear becomes temporary. Anxiety becomes powerless, because the one who made heaven and earth has declared ownership over your life, and what belongs to him cannot be destroyed. The Creator does not abandon what he designs. He perfects it. Every failure you endure, every delay you face, every wound you carry becomes material in his creative hands. He turns loss into wisdom, sorrow into strength, and confusion into clarity. Nothing is wasted in the workshop of the Creator. Psalm 121 invites us to see God not as a passive observer, but as an active craftsman shaping every moment. He is both the architect and the protector, both the designer and the defender. When you understand this, peace takes root deep within your being. You stop fearing what tomorrow may bring because you know who writes tomorrow. You stop doubting your worth because you realize that your very breath is sustained by divine intention. The Maker of heaven and earth is not far away. He is near, closer than thought, moving through every atom of creation. His help is not an occasional miracle. It is the constant hum of grace sustaining all that exists. To live with this awareness is to live unshaken, for you walk under the same authority that commands the universe. When you wake each morning, remind yourself that the one who made the dawn has already prepared the day. When you lay your head to rest, remember that the one who spread the stars keeps watch through the night. Every beat of your heart, every breath you take, every step you walk is monitored by the same divine intelligence that holds galaxies together. There is no safer place than within his will, and no greater protection than his presence. The psalmist knew this truth, and it turned his fear into song. You too can live with this melody within you, a quiet confidence that no harm will overtake you, because your helper is the Maker of all things. When storms rise, you will stand. When darkness falls, you will endure. For the Creator who formed the light will also form your deliverance. Faith is not about the absence of evidence, but the presence of remembrance. You remember who made you, who called you, who sustains you. Every time you declare, "My help comes from the Lord," you reaffirm your alignment with the divine order. You re-enter the rhythm of creation, where everything exists by His word. That word sustains you still. No harm can overtake the one who is anchored in the Maker of heaven and earth. Evil may approach, but it cannot conquer. Trials may arise, but they cannot destroy. For the same creative power that spoke the world into being now speaks protection over you. You are not a fragile accident. You are a deliberate design, watched over by divine eyes that never close. So lift your heart as the psalmist did. Look beyond the mountains. Look to the Maker. Let this truth settle deeply within you. You are guarded by the one who holds the cosmos in balance. Your help is not uncertain, your safety not dependent on chance. You are sustained by the eternal word that called light out of darkness and still calls peace into your storm. The Maker of heaven and earth is your helper, and because of that, you can walk through life fearless. The earth may shake, but your soul will remain steady. The world may fail, but your help will not. The God who made everything continues to make a way for you, even when you cannot see it. If these words have strengthened your spirit and reminded you that your help comes from the Lord, the Maker of heaven and earth, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Let this space be where your faith is renewed, your courage rebuilt, and your trust in God restored each day. He will not let your foot slip, the keeper who never sleeps. The psalmist continues his song of faith with a declaration that pierces through the ages. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. In these few words, there is an entire theology of divine stability, an assurance that life under God's care is not left to chance, fatigue, or human error. To understand the depth of this promise is to recognize that God's protection is not a temporary intervention, but an eternal state of attention. The believer walks upon uncertain ground, yet the one who watches never blinks, never sleeps, never forgets. The path may twist through valleys of shadow and ridges of fear, but the step of the righteous is preserved by an invisible hand that steadies every move. The image of slipping carries the weight of vulnerability. To slip is to lose balance, to fall without control, to become exposed to harm. The psalmist, who likely walked rocky paths toward Jerusalem, understood this image not as metaphor only, but as daily experience. Each step could mean danger, a loose stone, a hidden crevice, a shadow-concealing threat. Yet he declares that the Lord will not allow the foot of his child to slip. This is not a denial of obstacles, but a proclamation that divine guardianship transforms uncertainty into safety. The same hand that set the mountains in place also steadies your steps upon them. This promise extends beyond physical stability. It reaches into spiritual and emotional realms. To not let your foot slip means that even when your faith trembles, it will not collapse. God allows the shaking, but not the falling. The faithful may stumble, but they will not be lost. The ground beneath them is not earth but grace, and grace does not give way. The psalmist's confidence is not born of personal strength, but of divine attentiveness. The world may sleep, friends may forget, strength may fail, but the keeper remains vigilant. There is never a moment, not a single breath, when his eyes are not fixed upon those who trust in him. God's vigilance is not that of a guard who watches from afar, but that of a father who leans close to every heartbeat. The Hebrew word used here for keep or watch implies both guarding and nurturing. It is the same word used for a shepherd watching over his flock or a gardener tending his plants. This is not mechanical protection, it is relational care. The Divine Watchman does not merely prevent disaster. He guides the path so that each step fulfills purpose. Even what appears as detour is often divine redirection, a preservation disguised as delay. When the psalm says he will not let your foot slip, it means that nothing in your journey is wasted, and every fall prevented is a testimony of his intimate involvement. There are seasons in life when the soul feels it is walking on the edge of collapse. Fear grips the mind, uncertainty clouds vision, and despair whispers that God has turned away. Yet Psalm 121 stands as an unmovable pillar of assurance that divine attention never falters. The believer may be weary, but God is not. The human spirit may need rest, but the eternal spirit does not slumber. His awareness is infinite, his vigilance uninterrupted. Night and day are alike to him. No darkness hides his gaze. What is hidden from human sight remains fully visible to the Lord who watches. This truth is both comforting and humbling. It means that God is aware of everything, your silent battles, your private tears, your unspoken fears. He knows when doubt touches your heart, when fatigue threatens your endurance, when you feel forgotten. Yet even in those hidden moments, he is near. His presence does not depend on your awareness of it. He is faithful, even when you cannot perceive him. The night may feel long, but the watchman never leaves his post. To know that God does not sleep is to live with constant assurance of safety. In ancient times, human guards took turns keeping watch, for no person could remain alert forever. Fatigue eventually overcame even the strongest sentry. But God, the Divine Watchman, needs no replacement. His watch is eternal, his attention unbroken. The Creator who governs galaxies does not forget the fragile hearts of his children. You are under surveillance, not of suspicion, but of love, a love so complete that it surrounds you before danger approaches. There are moments in the life of faith when the soul slips not because of the terrain, but because of the weight it carries. Burdens of guilt, shame, disappointment, and fear make the path heavy, yet even then the promise holds. He will not let your foot slip. Grace steadies where guilt weakens. Mercy sustains where shame seeks to destroy. Hope lifts where despair presses down. Divine vigilance does not merely observe, it intervenes. The Lord steadies the trembling soul and strengthens the fainting heart. The one who trusts in him may stagger, but will never fall into final ruin. Every believer has experienced seasons where the foundations of faith seem to crack. Questions rise like waves, and certainty feels like sand slipping between fingers. But even in such storms, the Keeper of Israel does not allow the soul to collapse. The psalmist writes not as one who never knew trouble, but as one who discovered that trouble cannot outlast divine attention. The same God who kept Israel through wilderness and war, exile and return, keeps the believer today. His care is not limited by covenant era or geography. The same watchful eyes that guided the Israelites through desert heat and darkness now follow you through every corridor of your life. When Scripture says that he neither slumbers nor sleeps, it reveals two dimensions of divine protection. Slumber suggests brief distraction, a momentary lapse of awareness. Sleep suggests prolonged absence, the complete withdrawal of attention. The psalmist declares that neither exists in God. There is no moment when he is partially attentive, and no period when he withdraws completely. His vigilance is absolute. This means that every second of your existence unfolds under perfect supervision. Even when you rest, God works. Even when you forget to pray, he remembers your need. His constancy fills the gaps of your weakness. This understanding reshapes how we perceive delay and silence. Often when prayers seem unanswered, we assume divine inattention. But Psalm 121 dismantles that illusion. The apparent silence of God is not absence, but timing. The watchman is never unaware. He is always preparing, aligning circumstances, refining character. His stillness is not neglect, it is precision. When he appears to delay, it is only to deliver in fullness. The believer's task is not to awaken God, but to remain awake in faith, trusting that the one who never sleeps is already acting in unseen realms. To walk with this awareness is to live free from the tyranny of fear. For what can truly threaten the one whose path is guarded by the sleepless eye of the Almighty? There is no ambush that escapes his sight, no trap that forms without his knowledge. The enemy may plot in secret, but heaven hears every whisper. Before evil takes form, divine protection has already encircled the faithful. God's vigilance is not reactive, it is preemptive. He guards before harm arrives. His watch is not limited to the present, it extends backward and forward, encompassing every possible outcome. Imagine for a moment the breadth of such protection. Every morning you awaken not because of chance, but because the watchman sustained your breath through the night. Every step you take, though unconscious of its risk, is secured by his unseen hand. How many dangers have passed unnoticed because his vigilance intercepted them? How many attacks dissolved before they reached you because his word cancelled them? The believer's peace is not ignorance of danger, but confidence in divine oversight. What others call coincidence is often the invisible work of the sleepless watcher. Even the structure of creation reflects this truth. The sun rises each day without fail, the stars hold their courses, the seasons turn with precision, all because the Creator never sleeps. The stability of the universe mirrors the stability of his character. If his vigilance ceased for even a moment, existence itself would collapse. Yet he watches, and because he watches, life endures. The same consistency that keeps galaxies in orbit keeps your soul from destruction. The same intelligence that governs cosmic balance governs the details of your destiny. Nothing escapes his calculation. Nothing lies beyond his reach. There is profound comfort in knowing that divine vigilance does not depend on human worthiness. God does not stay awake only for the righteous or the flawless. His watch extends to the struggling, the doubting, the weak. He guards, not because you are perfect, but because he is faithful. His covenant of care is grounded in his character, not your performance. The one who truly believes this truth walks through life with holy assurance. You may fail, but he will not. You may forget, but he will remember. You may sleep, but he will watch. This knowledge invites surrender. The believer can rest precisely because God does not. You can sleep peacefully because your keeper never does. Worry becomes unnecessary when you realize that divine attention fills every moment you cannot control. The psalmist lifts the burden of self-preservation and lays it upon the shoulders of the eternal. In doing so, he discovers rest. Faith is not the absence of concern, but the transfer of control. When you hand your anxieties to the God who never sleeps, you stop living in reaction to fear and start living in response to grace. In the silent hours of night, when the mind revisits every failure and the heart replays every pain, remember this verse: "He who watches over you will not slumber." The darkness that hides the world does not hide you from him. His gaze pierces through every shadow, and his presence fills every space. You are seen, known, and guarded. The night may feel endless, but morning always comes because God decreed it so. His constancy is your assurance that no darkness lasts forever. Throughout Scripture, this theme echoes. In Exodus, he watched over Israel by a pillar of fire and cloud, guiding and protecting. In Psalms, he is described as a shepherd whose rod and staff comfort his sheep. In Proverbs, he is the guardian of the paths of justice. In Isaiah, he declares that he inscribes his people upon the palms of his hands, so that he cannot forget them. The same God who watched over patriarchs, prophets, and pilgrims watches over you. The vigilance that guarded generations continues unbroken, for his nature does not change. Even Jesus, during his earthly ministry, embodied this same sleepless care. When the disciples faced storms on the sea, he watched even while they feared. When they slept in Gethsemane, he prayed. When they scattered, he sought them. His resurrection is the ultimate proof that divine vigilance cannot be defeated by death itself. The tomb was sealed, guards posted, but heaven stayed awake. And because the watchman triumphed over the grave, your soul is secured beyond death's reach. To believe in the God who never sleeps is to live with unshakable confidence that your life is never unguarded. This truth dismantles the illusion of isolation. You may feel abandoned by people, misunderstood by the world, unseen in your suffering, but heaven's gaze has never left you. Even when you are surrounded by silence, you are under constant surveillance of grace. The watchman's presence is not always felt, but it is always active. You may not see him, but he is moving, rearranging, preventing, redeeming. There is also a moral dimension to this vigilance. Knowing that God's eyes never close calls the believer to walk in integrity. When you realize that nothing is hidden from his sight, hypocrisy loses power. You begin to live with holy transparency, aware that your words, thoughts, and deeds are continually before him. Yet this awareness does not produce fear, but reverence. To live under his watch is not to live under scrutiny, but under love. His gaze corrects not to condemn, but to restore. Every moment he sees you is another moment he sustains you. When the psalmist sang that he will not let your foot slip, he was not promising ease but endurance. The path may still rise steeply, the stones may still cut your feet, but you will not fall away from purpose. Divine protection is not always the removal of pain, but the preservation of direction. Even when you stumble, God redirects the fall into growth. The believer learns that pain, under his watch, becomes instruction, not destruction. Every step becomes sacred because it unfolds under divine observation. There are seasons when the believer walks through uncertainty so deep that every step feels like walking on water. Yet even there, the promise holds. The one who called Peter to step out of the boat is the same one who prevented his complete fall. Though the disciple began to sink, the Master's hand was already extended. This is the meaning of, "He will not let your foot slip." You may begin to sink, but you will not drown. You may stagger, but you will not break. The hand that created oceans still lifts his own from beneath their waves. Faith matures in the awareness of divine vigilance. Immature faith seeks constant signs. Mature faith rests in unseen assurance. The one who knows that God never sleeps does not demand evidence. He lives from memory and trust. He remembers the countless times help arrived before disaster struck, the innumerable moments when the unseen hand steadied the path. Gratitude grows from this remembrance, and gratitude strengthens faith. The world is filled with voices that tell you to depend on self, to stay alert, to never rest, to control every outcome. Yet Psalm 121 whispers a countercultural truth: rest, for God does not. The believer's strength flows from surrender, not striving. When you stop trying to be your own watchman, you finally experience the peace promised to those who trust in him. This promise does not mean passivity, it means partnership. You walk, he steadies. You plan, he directs. You fight, he covers. Divine vigilance does not cancel human responsibility. It completes it. Your part is obedience. His part is preservation. Together, they form the harmony of a life lived under grace. So as you continue your journey, whether through valleys of confusion or peaks of victory, remember that you are never alone on the path. The watchman walks beside you, before you and behind you. Every danger you cannot see, he has already neutralized. Every plan formed against you, he has already overturned. Every trap set for you, he has already disarmed. You are covered, protected, and guided. Let this truth dwell deeply within you. The keeper of Israel does not slumber nor sleep. You are under his watch this very moment. No harm can overtake you because the eyes that watch never close. His gaze is your shelter, his awareness your fortress, his presence your peace. Walk boldly, rest deeply, and trust fully, for your keeper is awake. If this word has spoken to your heart and reminded you of the God who never sleeps, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel. Stay connected to receive more reflections that strengthen faith, restore peace, and remind your soul that the Divine Watchman is always watching over your life. The Lord is your shade at your right hand, protection in the heat of life. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. In this line of the psalm, the imagery of divine protection shifts from the watchful eyes of a guardian to the comforting nearness of a shade. The ancient traveler, journeying across barren lands and burning paths, understood well the cruelty of the sun. Its relentless heat was both exhausting and dangerous. To find shade in such a landscape was to find life itself. The psalmist takes this familiar symbol and transforms it into a revelation. God is not only the distant overseer of your path, but also the immediate shelter at your side. He is both above you and beside you. His presence is not abstract, it is intimate, tangible, surrounding you with invisible safety in the fiercest of conditions. The Lord being your shade means that his presence intercepts what would otherwise consume you. The heat of trials, the glare of opposition, the exhaustion of striving, all are softened by the nearness of God. Just as the shadow of a great rock brings relief to a weary traveler, the presence of God cools the burning anxieties of the human heart. In him, the believer finds not escape from the desert, but endurance within it. The shade does not remove the sun from the sky, but it provides sanctuary from its intensity. Likewise, divine protection does not erase the existence of trials, but limits their power to destroy. The image of the right hand adds another layer of depth. In Hebrew thought, the right hand represents strength, action, and authority. To say that God is the shade at your right hand is to declare that he stands at the place of your vulnerability and your labor. Wherever you act, he is. Wherever you reach, he covers. Your strength is never exposed, for it is intertwined with his. The believer does not walk through life unguarded. Divine presence accompanies every motion, every choice, every confrontation. You may move, but your movement is covered. You may act, but your action is guided. The shade at your right hand signifies partnership, the assurance that you never face life's heat alone. This verse reveals something profound about the nature of divine companionship. God's protection is not always displayed through mighty miracles or visible deliverance. More often, it manifests as quiet presence, the subtle, constant comfort that keeps you from burning out. You may not always feel it, but it is always there. Just as a traveler becomes accustomed to the shade without constantly acknowledging it, many of God's protections go unnoticed. Yet without them, life's journey would become unbearable. Every time you endure where others collapse, every time you find peace in the midst of pressure, you are standing beneath his shadow. The phrase, "the sun will not harm you by day," speaks of the visible, external trials of life, the things that press upon the senses, the physical burdens, the public struggles. The psalmist assures that none of these can overpower you when God is your shade. He filters every ray, moderates every pressure, and measures every heat. The sun may burn upon the world, but its fiercest fire cannot reach the soul hidden in the presence of God. Even when life exposes you to intensity beyond your own strength, divine grace adjusts the temperature. You may feel heat, but not harm. You may feel fatigue, but not defeat. The Lord's shade does not remove the journey's demands. It redefines their impact. Then the psalmist adds something unexpected, "nor the moon by night." What harm could the moon bring? It does not scorch, it does not burn. Yet the ancients understood that night carried its own dangers: coldness, confusion, unseen predators, and superstitious fears of lunacy and spiritual attack. The inclusion of both sun and moon creates a poetic completeness. Day represents the external pressures that exhaust. Night represents the internal struggles that torment. The psalmist declares that God protects from both, the heat of visible trials and the chill of invisible fears. He guards your outer life and your inner world. No affliction of circumstance, no assault of emotion, no shadow of the mind can prevail where his presence reigns. To say that the sun and moon will not harm you is to affirm that no condition of existence escapes divine control. Whether in clarity or confusion, in the brightness of success or the darkness of uncertainty, God's hand remains steady. The believer walks through seasons of contrast, joy and sorrow, victory and waiting, day and night, but in all of them, divine constancy remains unchanged. The Lord's shade is not dependent on your awareness. It is a covenantal reality that surrounds you even when unseen. Consider how this truth transforms the way we perceive suffering. Many see trials as abandonment, as if God had stepped back to let life take its course. But the psalmist teaches that divine protection can coexist with affliction. You may still walk through the desert, but the shade walks with you. You may still face the heat of persecution or the cold of loneliness, but neither can consume you. The fire may refine, but it will not destroy. The night may test, but it will not conquer. The believer who understands this learns to rest not in the absence of hardship, but in the assurance of divine presence. The sun by day and moon by night represent more than physical realities. They symbolize the full spectrum of human experience. Day is the realm of visibility, activity, and productivity. It is when we labor, plan, strive, and face the expectations of the world. Night is the realm of rest, reflection, and vulnerability. It is when the noise fades and the soul faces itself. Both times hold danger. In the day, the danger of overexertion and pride. In the night, the danger of fear and despair. The psalmist proclaims that God's shade covers both. In the heat of ambition, he tempers your striving. In the cold of loneliness, he warms your heart. His protection adapts to your condition, ensuring that you remain preserved through every transition. To grasp this truth is to discover peace that surpasses understanding. When you realize that divine presence covers every hour, worry loses its logic. Anxiety thrives on the illusion that some moments are unguarded, some conditions unprotected. But when you understand that both sun and moon are under his command, the illusion shatters. Nothing in the cycle of time escapes his reach. He rules the brightness and the shadow alike. The believer, therefore, lives in continual safety, not because life lacks danger, but because danger lacks dominion. The shade of the Lord also speaks to intimacy. Shade implies closeness. You must be near the source to benefit from it. You cannot enjoy the protection of a tree from miles away. You must sit beneath its branches. Likewise, to experience God as your shade requires nearness of spirit. It calls for communion, awareness, and trust. The psalmist does not portray God as distant protection, but as immediate covering. His shadow falls over those who dwell close. This is why Psalm 91 echoes the same truth. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. To abide in that shadow is to live in constant communion, to let your thoughts, desires, and fears rest under his presence. There, the intensity of the world cannot scorch your soul. The idea of shade also implies movement. As the traveler walks, the shade follows. God's presence is not stationary, it moves with his children. His protection is not confined to sacred places or moments of worship. It accompanies you into the marketplace, the workplace, the battlefield, the unknown. There is no place where his shadow cannot reach. When you walk in obedience, His presence adjusts its position to cover you. Wherever you move, his nearness remains constant. The believer's confidence, therefore, does not depend on environment, but on relationship. When the psalmist says that the Lord is your shade at your right hand, he emphasizes proximity so close that nothing can separate. This speaks of covenantal intimacy, the union between God and his people that cannot be broken by circumstance. Even in rebellion, his shade lingers, calling the heart back. Even in silence, his protection remains. Such love cannot be earned. It can only be received. The one who learns to rest beneath it becomes unshakable. But divine shade is more than comfort, it is transformation. Just as constant exposure to the sun can alter the skin, constant exposure to divine presence transforms the soul. Those who dwell beneath his shadow begin to reflect his nature. The same presence that protects also sanctifies. The believer who lives under his covering becomes resilient, peaceful, and radiant. The trials that once threatened to burn away joy become opportunities for deeper intimacy with the protector. You learn to walk through the heat with grace, through the night with quiet confidence. The protection described in this verse is total. It extends over time, day and night, space, right hand, and experience, heat and cold. It means that no dimension of your life lies outside his reach. Whether you are in the season of public visibility or private testing, his covering remains. The external world may shift, but the internal assurance remains constant. Faith, then, becomes not an escape from the world, but the capacity to endure it without being scorched. There are moments when the sun seems unbearable, when trials multiply, when responsibilities weigh heavy, when the future feels relentless. In such moments, the believer must remember that the shade is still present, even if unseen. God's protection does not always feel like relief. Sometimes it feels like endurance. The shadow may not remove the heat, but it ensures survival through it. What matters is not the intensity of the sun, but the constancy of the shade. And when night falls, when confusion settles, when loneliness expands, when faith feels fragile, the same shade becomes warmth. The God who protected you from burning now protects you from freezing. His presence adjusts to your need. You may not always discern how he works, but you will always find that you are preserved. This preservation is not random. It is purposeful. God shields you because your destiny carries significance. You are sustained because your life bears divine assignment. Every believer walking in faith carries within them a promise larger than themselves. The Lord's shade at your right hand means that his protection is proportionate to your purpose. He will not allow the enemy to destroy what he intends to fulfill. You are covered not merely for comfort, but for calling. The sun and moon cannot harm what God has commissioned. The day and night may shift, but divine purpose endures. This assurance allows the believer to live without fear of seasons. Whether you are in the brightness of visibility or the obscurity of darkness, God's watch remains identical. Success does not remove his presence. Failure does not repel it. The same hand that covers you in victory shields you in struggle. When life's seasons change, the shade does not disappear. It simply alters its angle. This is the secret of sustained peace, trusting that divine protection is dynamic, not static. It adapts to your journey because the protector walks with you. The psalmist's declaration that the sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night, echoes through the centuries as a hymn of stability in a world of extremes. Humanity swings between brightness and shadow, noise and silence, striving and stillness. Yet for those who walk with God, these contrasts lose their power to destroy. Divine shade balances every extreme, moderates every pressure, harmonizes every imbalance. The believer becomes steady, unshaken by the alternation of circumstances, because the same presence governs them all. There is also hidden symbolism in the contrast of sun and moon. The sun governs the visible, the moon governs the reflective. The sun's light is its own, the moon's light is borrowed. The psalmist may be implying that God protects you not only from external assaults, but also from reflected ones, from fears and anxieties that arise not from reality, but from imagination. Just as the moon reflects light that can deceive the eye, the mind sometimes reflects illusions that disturb peace, yet the Lord guards even the inner realm of thought. His presence stabilizes not only what happens to you, but also how you interpret it. He guards both event and perception. Thus, divine protection in Psalm 121 is not mere survival, it is sanctified perception. To live under his shade is to see life differently. You begin to interpret trials not as evidence of abandonment, but as stages of refinement. You learn that divine covering is not fragile, it is eternal. No human failure, no demonic force, no natural circumstance can pierce it. You live within a spiritual climate controlled by grace. Every believer must come to this revelation personally. You may know the psalm by heart, but until you experience its reality, its words remain distant poetry. When life's heat rises, you will discover what shade truly means. When the nights grow long, you will feel the warmth of divine nearness. Faith deepens not in ease, but in exposure. Only under the fierce sun do you truly value the shade. Only in the darkest night do you truly perceive the light of his presence. And when you reach that understanding, fear loses its vocabulary. You begin to walk differently, not arrogantly, but confidently. You no longer fear the sun's intensity nor the moon's shadow. You know that divine protection is not partial or temporary, but complete and continuous. You understand that every breath you take, every step you walk, unfolds under the protective shadow of a faithful God. This is the power of Psalm 121. It does not promise a life without heat or darkness. It promises a God who remains constant through both. The shade at your right hand is not an occasional miracle. It is a perpetual reality. To live in that awareness is to live unshaken. So walk beneath that shade today. When the sun of pressure rises, remember who covers you. When the night of fear descends, remember who warms you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand, close enough to touch, faithful enough to trust, eternal enough to sustain. If this message has renewed your faith and reminded you that God's presence shelters you day and night, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel. Each word shared here is meant to strengthen your walk, deepen your trust, and remind you that under his shadow, no harm will overtake you. The Lord will keep you from all harm, the eternal preservation of your soul. The psalm concludes with a promise that extends beyond the visible, beyond the boundaries of circumstance, and even beyond the reach of time itself. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore. Here the song of ascent reaches its highest point. The journey that began with eyes lifted toward the hills now ends with the heart resting in eternal assurance. This is no ordinary protection. It is the preservation of the entire being. The psalmist no longer speaks of steps or shade or vigilance. He speaks of life itself, guarded, sustained, and preserved by the God who is both creator and keeper. To be kept from all harm does not mean to live untouched by suffering, for experience itself teaches that the righteous face storms, sickness, betrayal, and loss. Yet beneath the surface of pain runs a deeper current. Harm may touch the body, but it cannot destroy the soul. It may shake the foundations, but it cannot erase destiny. The divine keeping of which the psalmist speaks is not fragile shelter, but unbreakable preservation. It is the assurance that nothing which happens to you can separate you from the purpose God ordained for your existence. Harm may occur, but it will never have the final word. Every wound permitted by his hand becomes a pathway toward redemption. Every trial becomes material for glory. This final section of Psalm 121 reveals a shift in perspective, from temporal security to eternal preservation. The earlier verses speak of protection on the journey, of shade and watchfulness, but now the psalmist speaks of the whole scope of life, your coming and going, now and forevermore. This language stretches beyond the physical pilgrimage to Jerusalem and into the spiritual pilgrimage of every believer. The Lord does not guard you for a season, He guards you for eternity. His protection begins in time but culminates in immortality. The one who started the journey ensures its completion. To be watched over in your coming and going means that divine attention encompasses every rhythm of existence, your departures and returns, your beginnings and endings, your ventures and rests. It means that God's care is not episodic, but continuous, not occasional, but constant. He guards you when you rise and when you sleep, when you move forward and when you wait. There is no moment outside His awareness, no motion beyond His reach. The believer's life is wrapped in perpetual guardianship, invisible yet impenetrable. The phrase, "keep you from all harm," demands deeper meditation. The word keep in Hebrew, shamar, signifies not only protection but cultivation. It is the same word used when God placed Adam in Eden, to keep it. This keeping implies care that nurtures as well as guards. God's protection is not merely defensive, it is creative. He preserves not to imprison, but to enable growth. Every limitation He sets, every shield He raises, every delay He ordains, all serve to develop the soul He guards. Divine keeping is therefore not the freezing of life in safety, but the flourishing of life in grace. You are not merely protected, you are preserved for purpose. When the psalmist declares that the Lord will keep you from all harm, he is not denying the presence of evil in the world, but affirming the supremacy of God over it. Evil may act, but it cannot ultimately prevail. Its reach is limited by divine sovereignty. Even when harm appears to win, faith discerns the hidden hand that transforms defeat into destiny. Joseph was sold into slavery, yet he declared, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." That is the essence of divine keeping, not the absence of attack, but the guarantee of transformation. God does not always prevent harm, but He always converts it. The believer's life is therefore untouchable in essence, for every arrow that strikes becomes material for redemption. To live with this understanding is to walk in supernatural peace. Anxiety dissolves when you realize that no force in heaven or on earth can interrupt what God protects. Every breath is permitted by His will. Every danger that arises meets the wall of His purpose. The believer who truly grasps this truth no longer fears loss, because even loss becomes gain in the hands of the Redeemer. To be kept from all harm is not to be shielded from every wound, but to be sustained through every one of them. Your story may include tears, but it will never end in defeat. The Lord will watch over your life. The Hebrew phrase here refers not merely to existence, but to the soul, the inner self, the consciousness, the eternal essence. God's protection is holistic. He guards body, mind, and spirit. The body may age and weaken, the mind may battle confusion, but the soul remains intact under divine preservation. He guards your identity, your purpose, your spiritual integrity. The enemy may attempt to corrupt or confuse, but the soul anchored in God remains beyond his grasp. This is why Jesus said, "Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul." The divine watch extends beyond mortality. This watchfulness is not passive surveillance, it is active guardianship. God's watching is also His working. When He watches, He intervenes, He directs, He restrains. The believer is not left exposed to random fate. The same eyes that see danger also command deliverance. Every unseen mercy you have experienced, every narrow escape you have known, every mysterious peace that sustained you in despair, these are manifestations of his constant watch. Life under his care is a tapestry woven of miracles too subtle for counting. The psalmist ends with the phrase, both now and forevermore, dissolving the boundaries of time. This is not temporary reassurance, but eternal covenant. The God who keeps you in this moment will keep you in every moment to come. His protection does not expire with age or cease with death. It extends into eternity, where time loses meaning and preservation becomes perfection. For the believer, death itself is not harm but transition. The keeper who guarded your journey through earth will guide your entry into eternity. The one who preserved your steps on dusty roads will preserve your soul in celestial light. To meditate on this truth is to understand that your life is not a fragile accident sustained by luck, but a divine assignment carried in the hands of the eternal. You are surrounded, enveloped, and enclosed by divine faithfulness. Even when storms rise, they cannot breach the boundaries of God's keeping. Every event that touches your life has already passed through his permission. Nothing unfiltered by his love can reach you. What he allows, he redeems. What he forbids, he removes. This is the meaning of being kept from all harm. Divine preservation is not limited by human perception. Often, we recognize God's protection only in retrospect. We look back and realize how many disasters were diverted, how many pitfalls were avoided, how many moments of despair became testimonies of grace. But even now, in the present, his hand continues to work unseen. The believer who lives in awareness of this keeping learns to walk with quiet confidence. You do not need to know the details of protection to trust its reality. The Psalm's closing assurance, "The Lord will watch over your coming and going," resonates with every stage of life. From the first cry of birth to the final breath of departure, his watch remains unbroken. He was there at your beginning, and he will be there at your ending. Every transition, every journey, every change in season unfolds under his supervision. You may enter new chapters uncertain and leave old ones weeping, but his presence remains constant. The believer's life is a pilgrimage of preserved moments, each step guarded, each turn foreseen. This promise extends beyond the individual to the collective body of God's people. The same keeper who guards one soul guards all who belong to him. The community of faith is preserved not by its strength but by his. Nations rise and fall, generations pass, but the covenant endures. The same God who watched over Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David watches over you. The continuity of his protection across time proves the immutability of his character. His faithfulness is not a mood, it is his nature. In a world obsessed with security, Psalm 121 offers a deeper kind, the security of the soul. No human system, no fortress of wealth or intellect can rival the protection of the Almighty. When he guards, no one can breach. When he keeps, no one can steal. The believer who trusts this truth stands invincible, not by force, but by faith. The storms may rage, but peace remains within. The shadows may lengthen, but the light endures. For God himself has pledged, "I will keep you." Even in seasons of silence, when heaven seems distant and prayer unanswered, the keeping continues. The absence of feeling is not the absence of faithfulness. Often, God's greatest works occur beneath the surface of perception. Like roots deep in the soil, his protection sustains even when unseen. The believer may not always feel safe, but he is always kept. Safety in the kingdom is not emotion but condition, a state established by divine decree. To be kept from all harm is also to be preserved from spiritual decay. The world can injure the flesh, but sin seeks to corrupt the soul. Divine keeping includes preservation from moral collapse. When temptation rises, His Spirit provides escape. When weakness threatens, His grace provides strength. The believer who surrenders daily to divine keeping discovers resilience, not born of discipline, but of dependence. Holiness itself is sustained by the watchful presence of God. The Psalm's closing words, both now and forevermore, form a bridge between time and eternity. They remind the believer that divine keeping is not seasonal but eternal. The same faithfulness that covers you in this moment will cover you in every age. The future, with all its uncertainty, cannot surprise the one who already inhabits it. You are not moving into the unknown. You are walking into the continuation of His care. Forevermore means that even death, the great divider, loses its finality. The keeper does not stop at the grave. His watch extends beyond it, carrying the soul into everlasting rest. When the psalmist concludes with this vision, he invites the reader to rest in total trust. The journey of faith is long, the path sometimes perilous, but the destination is certain. The same God who guided Israel through deserts and wars guides every believer through trials and transitions. He who never sleeps, who shades by day and protects by night, who steadies every step and guards every breath, He will not cease His work. Divine preservation is not a promise you must sustain. It is a reality sustained by Him. This understanding transforms the believer's posture toward life. Fear loses its dominance, control loses its necessity, and worry loses its voice. You begin to live not as a victim of circumstance, but as a steward of divine security. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to witness His faithfulness again. Every pain becomes an invitation to deeper trust. Every uncertainty becomes a platform for the revelation of His keeping. Psalm 121 ends, but its promise continues. It is not merely a song for travelers ascending the hills of Jerusalem. It is an anthem for every soul ascending the path of life. Each line of the psalm moves closer to eternity, eyes lifted upward, feet steadied, heart guarded, soul preserved. It is the journey from fear to faith, from human weakness to divine sufficiency. And at the end stands the unshakable truth. The Lord Himself is your keeper now and forevermore. You are not walking alone. Every danger has been seen before it formed, every tear counted before it fell, every breath sustained before it was drawn. The Lord keeps you. He guards your going out and your coming in. He stands between you and every harm, within you and every doubt, before you and every tomorrow. His keeping is not poetic language. It is reality itself, the heartbeat of divine mercy sustaining creation. So when fear rises, remember, the watchman is awake. When pressure mounts, remember, the shade still covers. When harm threatens, remember, the keeper has spoken and His word cannot fail. You are safe, not because the world is gentle, but because your God is sovereign. Let this truth settle deep within you. The Lord will keep you from all harm. Your body may weaken, but your soul will endure. Your plans may falter, but His purpose will stand. The journey may challenge you, but the keeper will complete what He began. His promise is as eternal as His nature, and His nature does not change. Therefore, lift your eyes once more to the hills. Let the assurance of this psalm become the rhythm of your days and nights. The Maker of heaven and earth watches you still. The Keeper of Israel guards your soul. The one who began this work will finish it with glory. And when your earthly journey ends, the same eyes that never slept will welcome you into everlasting peace. If this message has strengthened your faith and reminded you that your life is safely held in the hands of the eternal Keeper, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel. Continue walking with us through the Word, where every promise of God becomes light for your path and protection for your soul.